Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. My name is Eric Speck, Peer Support Director at RPH Ally. I am super excited today because we have a special guest on, Tammy Davis, who is a neuroaromathy specialist and expert who's been doing neuroaromatherapy for I think like 40 years, if I understand right. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about triggers and how to be able to respond in an appropriate manner and manage our response to those kind of situations right after this. All right, awesome stuff. Tammy, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I really enjoyed that reel that you just shared. That was really cool.
Yeah, thank you. That's a brand new one. I've seen it here, but I always play the other one, so I felt like getting a little crazy, a little wild today, and trying something new. But yeah, I like that one too. Those are always neat. Um, so anyway, so today we're talking about triggers and emotional responses and how to manage that, right? And I think that's really, really important. I'm sure everybody watching this has been triggered at some point. I'm sure everybody has responded, or I should say, reacted in a
Exactly.
way that they wish they didn't because they were triggered. And if we could all learn ways to either not get triggered or how to behave and handle ourselves in a better manner when we are triggered, I think we would have many benefits from doing so.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a big difference between reacting and responding. And
Right.
what I've learned through my own personal journey with being triggered and anxiety and all the things that come along with that, and this being in this field and this development, because really what I've done is I've just taken the world of aromatherapy and expanded upon it. And how do we really retrain the brain? I mean, or help the brain regulate itself as opposed to being in that primal state.
Yeah, that's neat. So, are you able to describe to us very briefly, relatively simplistic, what happens when we get triggered? What is going on in the brain when that
Well,
happens?
the brain picks up on things before we even realize it. Sometimes it could be a facial expression, could be, it could be the eyes, it could be something in the face, could be a scent. Of course, it could be definitely something that we've witnessed. So there's a number of ways that the brain becomes triggered, and it just throws us into that
Yeah.
instinct mode, is what it does,
Yep.
because we are wired to survive. I mean, if we have anything that we're predisposed to, it's how to survive. And
Yeah.
what I'm learning is how we can actually trip that and get us into a responsive state where it helps us to think about something beyond that instinct, where we can
Yep.
become more effective in our decisions.
Yeah, because when I think of stress responses, I think of cortisol, I think of adrenaline, all those survival type neurochemicals that take over and allow us to survive. And those override the other parts of the brain, like the prefrontal cortex, right? Stimulate other areas of the brain. So we're not able to act, we're not able to think about what we're doing. We just act instinctively, like you said. So let's kind of start at the very beginning talking about triggers. What can we do to help prevent us from getting triggered in the first place? I know a lot of this stuff's out of our control, right? We can't control if somebody's going to say something mean, do something we don't like, but we can be better prepared, I think, before that happens. So when that event occurs, we aren't triggered. What would I be able to do to not get triggered?
Well, to me, it's the most simplest thing I've ever discovered, and that is to actually use scent. You can actually use a smell, a scent.
Okay.
I prefer genuine essential oils
Yeah.
because there's a lot of science to them. And and part of what I work with is the pharmacogenomics of it. So but here again, for this conversation, it's you could use whatever scent really,
Yeah.
just to kind of reacclimate. And but what I want to suggest is using them deliberately. The olfactory tubercle, which sits at the top of the nose, is the only it innervates the entire brain, and it's the only sense that we have that affects the limbic system. And so when you, in this case, use a scent that you really enjoy, something that will, before we came on here, I was telling you, I've actually done this work in treatment facilities. And
Yeah.
I've had a number of people, But what I really loved was the men that came to me, and they would say, okay, so like my grandmother, I remember sitting on my grandmother's lap, and she had this scent, and this is what I would really like. And this is how these
Yep.
people actually got through treatment, and how they
Yep.
got through their recovery, oftentimes without medications. It was amazing to watch. And
Yep.
so those aromas that we enjoy, that really just settle us into our heart, the
Yep.
suggestion is you take time to inhale it. Like, you don't want to put it in a diffuser, because I always get asked that question, should I just diffuse it? It's like, well, no, actually, no, because that's really, really not enough. It's not strong
Okay.
enough. But if you put it up here at the base of your nose, you can even put it at the top of your lip. And now you use it when you are enjoying something, like if you're playing with your children, or there's something that's pleasant happening. Use it when it's pleasant, so
Yep.
that way your brain ties it, like you were saying, olfactory recall. Your brain ties it to a good moment. And now what
Yep.
happens when you are out, potentially, if you are highly sensitive to sound, that's another big trigger. If there's a potential that, crowds, I mean, being around a large
Yep.
group of people is another way of being triggered. So using that sense now, when you know you're about to enter into a situation that
Hmm.
could potentially trigger you, what do? The brain's gonna recall it as a good moment, and it's going to become more responsive. And you keep doing this. You're actually training. This is actually olfactory training, where you can begin to train your brain to start becoming more responsive, and helping the brain use cortisol in a way that's effective as opposed to inflammatory.
Interesting. And I think this could be really
Mm.
effective, especially coming into the holidays. I know
Oh
depending on
yeah.
your family, sometimes it can be really stressful when you have to be around all your family members to use your technique before going over for a Thanksgiving dinner, for
Oh, you
example,
better believe it.
around a bunch
You
of
better,
people.
well, yeah, because there's emotional triggers with that. I mean, it just
Yeah,
seemed
yeah.
and it's interesting for me. Part of my some of my addictive behaviors were included eating disorders,
Okay.
and I would sit around a table and listen to everybody talking about food. Everybody's
Yeah.
talking about food, and like
Oh, yeah.
something about, and I'm like, and I would just feel like I was starting to feel crazed inside my head, because all I could hear, I was like, why are you people just talking about food? I could feel myself becoming really, really aggravated.
Yeah.
So using something like I'm going to make a suggestion for an oil, because first of all, I know it's safe with medications.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the other reason why it's good, and it's the oil selection is Roman chamomile. Now there's different types of chamomile, but it's a Roman chamomile. And the reason for Roman chamomile is it supports the production of GABA, which is
Mm.
that calming
Yep.
neurotransmitter, but it also promotes the release of oxytocin, which
Mm.
is necessary for emotional regulation. That is why we have
Yeah.
produced oxytocin. So it addresses the endogenous opioid system, as well as actually, as well as dopamine. It actually does both, because when dopamine is being used in a responsive way, the body is actually able to produce GABA.
Wow.
And so, yeah, that one particular oil, like I said, is actually quite good for all ages, and it's and absolutely safe to use with medication. And it's certainly a good way to start, and working to retrain deliberately for, like you said, for this really highly
Yeah.
emotional moment.
Yeah, that's interesting about the Roman chamomile. I have to see if my wife has that. I think when we talked about, I don't know, 6 months ago or more, I mentioned my wife for Christmas or for her birthday, she wanted an essential oil rack. So I got
Oh,
this
right.
big rack, and she probably has like 100 different essential oil bottles on there. So I think she has about everything. So I'll have to go see if she has Roman chamomile. Um, are you able to explain to us why that one works, specifically with that mechanism of action that you described, and other ones don't? I mean, is it like the chemical structure of the
Yes,
oils like acting on receptors? It is. So something like
it
that.
is. It's a very unique chemical profile. No other oil has this chemical profile. So, like, if you actually were to break down oils, you'll see that, I'll give you an example, like limonene. Limonene is found in 211 oils. but
Okay.
the chemical makeup of Roman chamomile is unique to that plant. It's a
Wow.
series of angelates. Yeah, and so that's number one, it's unique, but number two, it's there's a synergy. And that's the one thing that we as scientists have not been able to figure out. We can't replicate the synergy. They cannot understand how these chemicals work. I mean, it's just like baking, right? You know, if you put something in and you use baking soda when the recipe calls for baking powder, you get a different animal altogether.
Right. Right.
And it's the same thing can be said for these chemicals. So it is the chemical structure number one, and it's the synergy of those chemicals and how it impacts the system.
Oh, that's wild. The science behind all this is amazing. I don't think most people think of science behind aromatherapy, or essential oils. They just think they smell nice and that's about it. But there really are, I want to say, medicinal properties. Do you guys call them medicinal properties? Talking
Yes.
about essential oils? Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at
I mean,
least,
I do use a little caution when it comes to medicinal, but I will say, some people, like some companies will use the word therapeutic.
yeah,
And
that may have been a better word.
yeah, I mean, they do have therapeutic properties, absolutely. And but what I've done over the last 15 to 20 years is actually devote my time to breaking down every single oil to understand, because no two oils do the same thing. And
Mm,
that's the reason why I can tell you that about Roman chamomile. And one question I
yeah.
always get asked is, well, where's the science? And there's not a lot of science to the specific oils, but there's a lot of science to their chemicals. And when you
Yeah.
start looking into that, it's incredible the volumes of information that's out there.
Yeah, I guess so many people say that. They're like, "Where's a controlled clinical study, showing that the effects of this?" And sometimes it's like, come on now. So that's really neat. So we talked about using essential oils to place them on you when you're having an enjoyable experience. So therefore, when you're going into a situation that may not be enjoyable, having that aromatherapy, that aroma is going to put you in a better place mentally. So when you're in that not favorable scenario, you're almost faking your mind out to be thinking it is a favorable, enjoyable scenario.
But
What about afterwards? What happens if somebody gets triggered? Are they able to use the aromatherapy then to go calm themselves down in the moment if they weren't doing this prior to going into a situation?
absolutely, and that's what I was going to follow up with what you were saying, because what we are doing when we're doing this is like I said, especially with Roman chamomile, you're slowing down. You're able to create that emotional regulation, and it's actually like a switch in the brain. You go from instinct, which is habitual, that automatic, that's your subconscious. I mean, this is really a way of tapping the subconscious and not having it be so automated. So it takes you into that space of recognition and that place of choice. Do I want to go forward, and do I really want to react this way, or can I do something else? So it really, they help you reestablish cognitive control. That's why I like essential oils. Now, if you use a regular scent, if you're just using some sort of fragrance,
Mhm.
not so much. But if you're using an essential oil, then absolutely.
Yeah, because it has more of those medicinal or therapeutic properties to it that I gotta allow it to act a little bit better. And what about doing something else besides aromatherapy? I should say something else in conjunction with aromatherapy. I think of meditation practices, deep breathing techniques, other things people use to calm themselves down. For example, there's days that I'm really well at taking breaks, doing my meditation practice, doing my journaling, and I'm in a much better space mentally than if I feel I'm too busy or too stressed out to do those things, right? Kind of counterintuitive. I just wonder if this can be added to a routine like that where you get additive or even synergistic benefits.
Oh, most definitely. And one of the things that I like to talk about too is, like, especially if you're doing any sort of deep breathing. I love the deep breathing work, but if you put your hand over your heart and you breathe slowly, there's nerve cells. I mean, just this action alone, there are nerve cells in the heart that are found nowhere else in the body, just on the heart, at the top of the heart. And that begins to sync the brain and the heart, because this motion right here signifies that you're okay, because your
Mm,
hand's right there in your heart. And if you take some deep breaths and you incorporate the oils into it, because that's what I love about the oils. They're not about a standalone. They can be integrated
yeah,
beautifully. So, and
yeah.
humming. I have to tell you, Eric, humming, when you hum, you're creating or activating the production of nasal nitric oxide, which is necessary for which improves circulation and deepening your breath as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah. This sounds so nice. One thing that I catch myself doing is, I'll be head down in my work, and I get tunneled. I get so focused on what I'm doing that I, don't take breaks, and it just leads to this stress and stress. And before you know it, I'm just completely exhausted because I've worn myself out mentally. But one thing I notice is my breathing becomes really shallow when that
yes,
stress occurs. And my muscles get tense, it gets tight. I'm just so focused, thinking, okay, I got this job, this task, I need to get this done. And my breathing becomes really shallow. And then it's just, one thing after the next with building up these stress responses and increased cortisol. So it's important for me to take those breaks, take those deep breaths and realize that, I've been taking shallow breaths and how negative that's been for my mental state too. So I haven't done much with the aromatherapy despite having 100 to 200 in my bedroom
you've
on a
got an
shelf.
apothecary there.
Yeah, we do, but it's definitely something I believe in. I'm so glad you were able to come on today and talk about that. I honestly didn't know we were going to be focusing on aromatherapy, but you know, I'm glad we did. I think that's very, very helpful. Tammy, if anybody else has any questions about this and wants to learn more, where would you point them to?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, and that's always
Okay.
a good place to come. And that would be the best place to go is on LinkedIn because I'm on there every day, and I'm happy to respond to your messages. My email address, if they just want to email me directly, is tammy@beremarkablyhealthy.com.
I love it. And do you work with people, or if they have questions,
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
yeah, awesome. All
Absolutely.
right.
Yeah, yeah. We can schedule. I mean, I'm happy to get on a call and talk to people because that's just I love teaching. This is my mission is to teach this to people so that they can not necessarily depend on someone, but they can begin to do it for themselves, but understand
Yep.
how to do it in a safe manner.
Yep, exactly. And like you said, there's so much to know about these. All essential oils are different. There's a science behind it. There's unique, molecular structures of each oil that are going to do different things. So without having somebody like yourself who has extensive knowledge of these products, how are you going to know what's best for what element and what situation? So thank you for coming and sharing that information to us, and thank you for offering to be a resource for anybody who's watching and has more questions. If anybody has any questions for me, you know where to find me, rphalley.com. Come over to the Peer Support Show. I'm always glad to answer any questions or help in any way I can. Tammy, thanks again for coming on. It was great having you. I'm sure we'll be in
Thank you so
touch.
much. I look
All right.
forward to it.
All right. Take care, Tammy. Bye bye.
Thanks, you too. Bye.